It is 2:01 p.m. We are going to begin this work session of the Lake County Board of County Commissioners. On today's agenda, come on. Do you have an agenda pulled up? Mine's not.
Go on the Google thing at the bottom.
I've got it, but it's not open. I'm right on it. It just won't. Double click. Okay. Agenda item number 1 for today's work session: discussion and overview of the Cloud City Conservation Center (C4) and review of C4's deferred maintenance funding from 2024, led by Emily Olson. Thank you, Emily. Take it away.
Do you want me to sit up with you all so I can
come
read
on
a
up.
PowerPoint? Well, thank you all for your time today. We have a presentation on C4 and our work, and it also included in the presentation is a report specifically on the deferred maintenance funding the BOCC granted us in 2024. I just want to acknowledge and thank our staff, board members, and community members who support our work, who are joining us today. Some of them are in person and some are on Zoom. And I think we really wanted to share with you all that while I may be the executive director of C4 and the one speaking to you today, that this is really a community organization that has support from our whole community. And so to start this presentation, I wanted to follow a little, touch on a few of the things we talked about regarding nonprofits in our nonprofit work session earlier this year. So like all nonprofits, C4 is guided by our mission. And our mission is that C4 fosters pathways to a healthier planet and community through initiatives that inspire the conservation of our natural environment. And we did update this mission in 2022-2023, but it still really reflects the mission that we were founded on. And really, this helps guide all of the decisions that we make at C4. We are also guided by our vision, Healthy Planet, Healthy People. We established this in 2018, and we did this because we wanted to acknowledge our commitment not just to the environment and the planet, but also to our community. And I think this is a really important piece of our work at C4. Every decision we make, we consider not only how is this going to impact the planet and our environment, but how is it going to impact our community? And this often sets us apart from other organizations working on environmental stewardship, because we know, like you all know, that Lake County is unique and something that works elsewhere might not work here. And we really need to consider what is the impact on our community as well. And I think we'll talk about a few of our programs that have changed since we established this vision and how it impacted that. There we go. And then the last piece that really guides our work are our values. So we established these at the same time that we revamped our mission a few years ago, and we tried to do a little branding with the 4 C's. So our core values are climate action. We are really committed to addressing climate change in our community and in solutions that are based in science. Connection, relationships are at the core of what we do. Community resources, we really want to help support not only programs, but also infrastructure and resources for our community. And not just resources that live within our own organization, but how can we partner with other groups in the community? And then a culture of equity and inclusion, because we know that climate and environmental issues do not impact all individuals and all groups and all communities the same. And so we really want to acknowledge how these issues might impact people who are different from us in the solutions and programs that we bring forward. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Sarah.
Good to see you. No, you are all good. We were just talking about the mission, vision, and values that really guide C4 in the same way that most nonprofits are guided
Okay.
by those things. Moving on, I did want to give you a little bit of background on C4 and our history before we jump into our work today. We were founded in 2013 by a group of Lake County residents who were concerned about the environment. In fact, one of their first projects was to help launch recycling in Lake County in partnership with Lake County government. And actually, I think something not known by many is that Lake County government, the BOCC, provided this funding to launch C4 as a nonprofit. And you have funded our work every year since our inception. This history is dedicated to 10 years because we celebrated our 10-year anniversary in 2023, and I am not a graphic designer, so if you know anyone that can update PDFs, please let me know. But yeah, it just covers a little bit of the work that we have worked on. Like last night with the Leadville Race Series. In our first year, we partnered with them to help launch their zero waste efforts. We've worked with them for, I guess this will be our 15th year. We helped bring Lake County's first solar garden here. We helped launch composting with the school district and open the recycling drop sites for the landfill. In 2016, we were working with the school district, supporting their styrofoam stoppers group to help remove styrofoam from the school district. And I didn't live here then, but they received the Presidential Environmental Youth Award, which is a huge recognition for our community. We built Cloud City Farm, which is Lake County's only produce farm. It's also the highest farm in North America, which is pretty cool. It often, I think for most communities, it doesn't necessarily look like a farm from the outside, but if you haven't visited the farm, I really invite you to come. I would wait till the summer. It's pretty cool right now, but we won't have we'll have a lot more stuff growing in the summertime. We were part of the partnership where Lake County was awarded the Robert Wood Johnson Culture of Health Prize in 2019, which was a huge accomplishment for our community. And yeah, this kind of just covers the history of things that we have worked on over the years. So then who are we? So 100% of our staff and board are Lake County community members. We have 9 full-time staff, and then we have, last year we had approximately 60 part-time seasonal employees, contractors, interns who worked with us throughout the year. But I could say out of all of those almost 70 people, 1 person lives outside of Lake County. So we're pretty proud that we are investing in our community. I will introduce you to our staff as we're here today as we get to their programs. A little bit about me, if you're curious. I moved to Lake County in 2018. I originally worked for Lake County Build a Generation. I have about a decade of experience working in food access and health equity issues, mostly in Colorado. And currently, in addition to my work at C4, I also serve on the St. George Food Committee. I serve on Parkville's Water Board, and I also serve on the Colorado Blueprint to End Hunger. And so I think that reflects our value of relationships at C4. We really want to be involved in our community and understand, what's going on in Lake County, how can we tap into what's going on a state level, and how can we really make sure to bring those resources here to our community. Awesome. So then we have our board of directors, and I believe we have several board members online. We also have Tony Barlage, who is our board chair, who just joined us. And we wanted to share our board with you just to demonstrate the experience that they bring to both our organization and providing that oversight to making sure we are making decisions in alignment with our mission, and also to our financial oversight. Thank you, Elsa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
yeah, and so I'm sure you recognize some of these faces and names. We do have some county employees on our board, but really they bring together a combined pretty significant experience working in areas around the environment and health equity. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. I'm happy to answer them as they come up. And so in 2023, we really wanted to figure out how do we translate our mission, vision, and values into something concrete here in Lake County. And so if you weren't aware, the state of Colorado has a roadmap to reducing greenhouse gas pollution and emissions in Colorado. Their goal is to reduce GHG emissions by 100% by 2050, which is an incredibly ambitious goal in our country. And they have been working very hard to make this happen. And so our goal at C4 is to help Lake County achieve the state's goal, but in the way that works best for our community. The state is passing legislation, they're enacting laws that our county will be asked to comply with. We already are being asked to comply with those laws. And if we wait, then we will have to take action in the way that the state mandates. But if we start to consider this now, if we start to move this work forward now, then we can do it in the way that works best for our community. We can say, how do we comply with this? How can we plan to make sure that we can do this? And it's in a way that isn't going to impact our community members, where all of a sudden the BOCC isn't asked to add a huge line item to your budget to comply with those rules. I think a great example that we'll talk about later is it is now law in Colorado, if and when we update our building code, we will have to comply with the most energy efficient electric code that is available. We are currently not in compliance with that. We haven't updated our code, but when we do, we will have to comply with that, and that will have some pretty significant impacts for new buildings in Lake County. Those buildings will have to be solar ready, they will have to be EV ready, and all of those components, I don't know for sure where your affordable housing projects stand at the moment, but I know those components were removed from the buildings on 6th Street and with the school district property. And that is something for us to consider, because while it might be an upfront cost for us to fund adding those into the project, that means we're building resilient housing for our community that our community can live in for generations to come. I think we all have experienced what it is like to live in a 100-year-old home. And I don't think we want that for the future of our community, to live in housing that was built quickly without consideration for the future. And that is something that's coming from the state. So just one example of that. So we really want to figure out what works best here in Lake County. So why is this important? So we are already seeing the impacts of climate change here in Lake County. We are seeing an increase in wildfires. We're seeing an increase in days without frost and an increase in extreme weather. All of those things impact our community. For example, the rainstorm that we experienced last summer, that damaged a significant amount of infrastructure. Our infrastructure wasn't ready to handle that amount of water. My understanding was that was like a 1,000-year event. It was a pretty freak event, but it does do damage that we are accountable for. Our water and sewer systems, our housing infrastructure, they're already struggling. An increase in days without frost, that means a shorter winter. If we are really looking to build our economy based on winter tourism, if we have a shorter winter, that is going to be a challenge here in our community and in surrounding communities. If we are really concerned about our community well-being and our most vulnerable residents, a lot of our residents fall into categories that are considered more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change based on their age, their health status, their job, their language, their housing status, their income. So whether we like it or not, our community is going to be more impacted. all of those challenges that we're facing as a community are going to be amplified by the impacts of climate change. I think a huge thing for us to consider is, I don't know if you've ever been out on Harrison during boom days and talked to people like, hey, why are you here in the middle of the summer? For our zero waste team that's outside for that entire event, the number one thing we hear is, oh, I came up to escape the heat on the Front Range. We are already a community that people come to escape the warmer temperatures the Front Range is experiencing. We are just going to grow. And I think you all are, you're doing your due diligence to make sure that we're making these decisions in the most informed way possible that's best for our community. But as our weather changes, I think because of climate change, it's going to change and affect Lake County. So where does C4 come in all of this? So last year in 2024, 50% of Lake County residents engaged in our work. So that's a little under 4,000 people. And we currently have 4 main focus areas: energy efficiency, environmental education, waste diversion, and sustainable food. And these focus areas were really chosen and informed by the community. When C4 was founded, we started with energy efficiency and waste diversion. We added in environmental education, which slowed down over the years. In 2018, when the farm opened, sustainable food really became our focus. And then from 2020 on, we really have worked to bring all of these programs to the same level in our community. So we're going to talk about each of them. And we're going to start with our environmental education program, which is led by Ash Warner. And I don't know if Joe is in the room, but we also have an AmeriCorps service member in partnership with Mountain Roots out of Gunnison, who helps with this program. And I do want to acknowledge that our environmental education in the program that exists today is in thanks to a partnership with GOAL. When GOAL really decided to integrate with the county, I think their education during the school day was identified as a program that the previous BOCC didn't feel like it was a fit for that integration, but because it was written into the existing GoCo grant, GOAL approached us and asked us if we would be interested in taking that on. And we were, and really because we believe that the number one way to get people to care about the planet is to have a relationship with the outdoors. And we think it's so important that every youth in Lake County gets outside during the school day and engages with our local environment to learn about and apply the things that they're learning in the classroom. And it also, through this program, we have since expanded it to add in paid youth internships because we really want to support pathways to leadership and learning in our community for youth. And so last year we had 5 different paid opportunities for local youth to explore green careers. And we are hoping to have that many as well this year. So that includes internships on the farm and also working with seniors who are getting their internship credit and how we can help them with those projects. We also think it's so important to support our school district during this time. In a small community, supporting a small number of students can have a huge impact. And so it only takes 3 students to impact scores 5% in Lake County versus 18 students in Eagle. And that's a pretty huge swing, especially when I believe we have the worst 3rd grade reading level in the state. And so that's really our goal with this program is how can we connect kids to our community, our environment, and how can we support our school district. And I will also point out, because I think this is a really important aspect of our program, so Ash actually has a master's in natural science education and is a national board certified teacher. And that is a huge priority for C4. When we are hiring and bringing individuals on our team, we really want locals, people who live in Lake County and understand our community, but also who are bringing really strong skills to this work and can really support our community in a way that works for them. So then that'll bring us to our waste diversion program, which I mentioned to you all last night.
Still in this
Yes, this is my favorite picture of students. I love it so much, it will never go away. Yeah, so we have our Zero Waste Event Services where we work with events like the Leadville Race Series and Boom Days to reduce their waste impact on Lake County. And I do really want to emphasize that when all of that waste that we collect through those events, which is the vast majority, it is everything except for what ends up in a city trash can or in an Airbnb trash can because someone somehow avoided our volunteers. With the race series, it's about 75% that we collect, and with Boom Days, it's about 30% of what we collect does not go into our local landfill. We have worked really hard to build relationships with reputable recycling facilities, as well as we work with a local compost business out of EB to make sure that that waste does not end up in our landfill. As you all know, the lifespan of our landfill is in question, and it is likely that if it is expanded, that we will have to line those cells, which is significantly more expensive, and that is a huge priority for C4. How can we keep waste that can be diverted elsewhere out of our landfill? Yeah.
That actually touches exactly on something I wanted to ask you. We're on the subject of waste diversion, and you had said earlier in ways that work for Lake County. From our end, looking at how tight things can potentially be in the future. Recycling at the dump, can it be expanded in ways that pay for themselves? I've heard from other members of the community that we've got a lost opportunity up there with contaminated batches and how they have to go straight to the dump or straight into the trash. And it was proposed that finding full-time paid positions to ensure the contaminated batches were sorted properly would almost pay for themselves. Do you have any way to chime in on that, or do you have any knowledge of that?
So I don't know the math on if those positions would pay for themselves. And I can't speak to the certainty of this, but I do know that the landfill submitted a pretty significant grant to the EPA to help improve our recycling infrastructure and add compost infrastructure. My understanding is it was between $4 and $5 million. So it is a significant investment, but it is the first time that our community has gone after one of those grants. So I think that was a huge win that we were actually able to get together and submit that application. And that probably, as long as those funding opportunities still exist, that probably is one of our best options moving forward. My understanding of the current challenges with the recycling infrastructure is, we, and C4 was part of this, creating the drop sites so that our second homeowners and visitors to Lake County would have access to recycling outside of landfill recycling center hours. And they didn't have to be here, to put something out on the curb to be picked up, which is a challenge. And so we opened the drop sites. Unfortunately, recycling really has to be sorted and contamination free to even have a chance at being successful. And without a MRF, which is the machine that helps sort recycling, it is incredibly difficult and expensive to do that. MRFs start at around $1 million, so it's a significant investment for a community like ours. There's also the question of space at the landfill. My understanding from speaking to county staff there, which this could have changed, is that there really isn't space to put recycling out and sort it up there. So that would be also the county looking at more space, where is a safe place to do that. And it really is, how can we reduce contamination? We we've written several grants since 2019. The state used to have a grant opportunity called RREO, where communities could apply for infrastructure funding. I believe that's how we funded the drop sites. In 2020, we were awarded a $350,000 grant to purchase a new truck. At that time, my understanding was the landfill was using a road and bridge truck to empty the drop sites, and that truck was frequently needed in the winter for other operations and frequently broke down. And then when it broke down, the drop sites would fill up, and then the county would have to pay a contractor quite a bit of money to pick up the roll-offs, bring them to the landfill, and then they were still bringing those contaminated loads to Denver, where you would pay for, I think it's $1,000 a trip to get there, and then they would get rejected for contamination. So I know that practice has really stopped. That is unfortunately why we hear about loads getting dumped in the landfill, but honestly, it's saving you all money at the moment, and I don't love it, but we do want to work with you all to figure out what's a long-term solution rather than implementing a quick fix that gets us through a few months. And so I think if you're going to look at hiring staff to sort, I would really just look at a MRF. And I do think
Is that MURF or MIRF?
it's
Materials recovery.
MRF. Okay.
and I will say, so currently, our sustainability manager and Robin from the landfill, we were accepted into the EPA's Sustainable Communities Accelerator Network, which is, I think, the first or second time they've done this. And we were accepted specifically to look at a community waste management plan. And the idea of this network, there's no cost to participating in it, and we actually, there is a conference in July, I believe, and Climax is actually covering the cost for both C4's employee and the county's employee to attend. The idea of this network is to connect communities across the country who are dealing with similar issues and really learn from each other and say, okay, how did you address this? What things can we try here? And so it's not necessarily to come up with another plan, but it's to say what are the tangible things we need to do and what order should we do things in. And our hope is that if we are awarded that EPA grant, that this will kind of give us the work plan to implement that grant. And I also want to acknowledge, because I didn't introduce her, but we have our sustainability manager here, Izzy Lyle, and she has a master's in sustainability and resiliency planning. And so this is really her bread and butter and her background. And the other thing I wanted to note with this is we do have a community compost program on Cloud City Farm. It is free to the community to participate in. We accept food scraps from your home kitchen, so if you aren't already signed up and want to compost, it's on our website. And we are very excited because for several years we have been working to launch a pilot commercial composting program with our local businesses, and we have both CMC and Lake County School Districts on board. We need 3 more businesses to sign up so that we can kick it off. And just so you all understand, some of the challenges we're facing, the cost to that is $150 a month. And right now, that is too much for many of our local businesses. And so we are working on ways to help bring that down. But right now, it's really how do we figure out how do we make this work. And our hope is it will reduce their waste costs overall, but we can't promise that given the state and expenses of waste in our community. Yeah. So then we have our sustainable food program, and really the heart of our sustainable food work is Cloud City Farm and Community Garden down on 6th and McCarthy, which are run by Sarah, our farm director, and Liz, our farm manager, who are working diligently right now to expand our growing season from a few months in the summer to year round. They are this week in the process of completing a new propagation garden, oh my goodness, excuse me. Greenhouse, so that we can grow year round, and that project was funded by the Colorado Department of Agriculture. And so typically we grow about 3,000 pounds of food annually on the farm. We bring in about another 3,000 through other local farms, since there are things we cannot grow. I will be shocked if we can ever grow corn successfully in Lake County. But we do have tomatoes for a few weeks in August. So if you are sick of the tomatoes at Safeway and want a farm fresh one, please come to the farm.
My tomato plants are so sad. I've
Well,
got a greenhouse too, and they are struggle built.
You are in luck. We are hosting a high altitude gardening workshop in April. I think there are 4 spots left in the afternoon session, so sign up soon. We also have a community garden on the farm, and we really are just investing in local food production so that our community can have a stronger, more resilient local food supply. Right now, the vast majority of us rely on Safeway or other grocery stores that are bringing in food from outside of our state, outside of our country, and that is a huge risk. I think we all saw in 2020 what it looks like when our grocery store does not prioritize our community. And so our goal is, how can we really create a stronger food system and bring more food here?
We see it every summer,
Yep,
over the
we
weekend.
see it every summer. And I do think, there are some other really important pieces to this. So we rank 6th lowest in the state for access to healthy food. We also, as a county, we have the highest SNAP gap in Colorado and the 12th highest of all rural counties across the United States. So that means that SNAP dollars in Lake County don't go as far because of our cost of food. And one way that we are working to address that is you can spend your SNAP dollars on Cloud City Farm at our market. And when you spend your SNAP dollars with us, we are part of a state pilot where the state will actually reimburse you for up to $60 a month spent on healthy food.
In California.
Yeah.
Love that.
So we are really excited to pilot that this summer, and really hope that we can encourage more Lake County residents to utilize that program and also spend those dollars locally whenever possible.
Do you think that's gonna stay? That funding, the $60 reimbursement? I mean, I love the idea, I can see it coming back, but I'm just wondering
So it is a grant that the state has, and I believe this is the second of 3 years, and they have not indicated to us in any way that it is at risk. But I will also say that Colorado has a very prolific Double Up Bucks program, where when you spend your SNAP dollars on local produce, it's 2 for 1. You can only participate in one of those 2 programs, so if the produce incentive program went away, we could switch to Double Up Bucks. And I will say that Safeway is notorious for being the largest chain in Colorado that does not participate in that program. Yeah. Most other large retailers do. So I think there is another option. But with all of that said, our market is also donation based, so it is pay what you can or want for anything that you purchase from us. We really our goal is that Lake County residents have access to this food, and we don't want the cost to be the barrier. That's also why we don't sell to restaurants. 3,000 pounds of produce, one restaurant we couldn't supply one restaurant in a week in the summertime, but we really want the food we're growing to end up on Lake County residents' plates. So this brings me to our energy efficiency program. We have 2 staff in our energy program. We have Christian Naleel, who is our community resource navigator, who's with us today, and then we have Richie Mutu. Richie is very lucky and is on vacation right now, but I will note that Richie has 2 decades of experience owning his own renewable energy business, which will come into play a little later on. And so our energy program has a few different focuses, but really our goal is how do we make Lake County homes more energy efficient, both to save residents money on their energy bills, but also to make our local housing stock more resilient and address delayed maintenance issues within our housing stock. So we have a few different ways that we do this. Since our founding, we have had a home energy audit and rebate program where we help residents access energy audits, where someone comes to your home, does a whole inspection. That inspection is based on Energy Smart Colorado's process, and all of our auditors are certified by Energy Smart. The cost of an audit is about $500, thanks to rebates from Excel Energy and then from the BOCC. This is the program that you all are currently funding with us. We are able to bring that cost down to $50 for a Lake County household. So an audit will identify ways for you to save energy and save money on your energy bills, and then gives you a low-cost pathway to implementing those improvements. Thanks to funding from Energy Smart, and then also another grant we have recently received, we have funding to help residents, regardless of their income, make those improvements. I will say our funding for residents who make below 150% AMI is significantly more than our funding for residents who make above that. And that is why our partnership with the BOCC is so important. It has been relatively easy for us to access money for financial assistance for low-income community members, but if we really are approaching our energy efficiency work and wanting to work in our entire housing stock, we need flexible dollars that are not based on income, that are based on you live in this community. Because even though that home may be owned by a second homeowner right now, that is a home that could be owned by a Lake County resident in the future. And we are already seeing, when you purchase a home today, you may have to figure out how to purchase that home cash up front, and then it needs $100,000 in work. And regardless of your financial state, I think for most Lake County residents, that just is not feasible. And so it's really important that we have programs to help community members access all of the support available, because we will not achieve our goals as a community or as an organization if we don't make sure that we have support for everyone. That said, for our low-income residents, we have helped invest over $1 million in our local housing stock since 2020. And I will say that 3/4 of that funding came from outside of our community. To make improvements, as part of his role, Christian helps community members not only access the programs that we run internally, but also state and federal programs that help bring money to our community to address housing issues. And I think that has been a really important part of our work, because we have really seen how difficult it can be for some individuals to access those programs, just even filling out an application.
Would the other quarter of that funding, like the $250,000, would that ARPA funding have been counted in the $1 million?
The 250 was is the funding that the BOCC granted us last year.
Right, the ARPA
Yeah.
funds, the K through L.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about exactly what we did with that next.
Cool.
One thing I do wanna point out that I realized I didn't include on here is Christian also runs our bill payment assistance program, where we help pay past due utility bills and help community members purchase propane, firewood, or wood chips for their heating for their home. Last year we gave out a little over $111,000 in financial assistance, and I want to point out that funding that comes from utility providers in our state, from outside of our community. C4 does not fundraise to pay utility bills. That is a state mandated program that all public utility providers have to pay into, and we help Lake County residents access that funding. So I am going to hand it over to Christian now, you all should have received, we had submitted a official report on the funding you granted us, or the previous BOCC granted us in 2024 for a delayed maintenance program. Yeah, so I'm gonna let Christian talk about this and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, there you go. I know you all know me from other places, so just to clarify, I'm strictly only wearing my C4 hat today and not my city council member or regional housing authority member hat. The Energy Systems Fund is a program that I solely ran at C4 for the duration of last year and potentially this year, we'll get into shortly, but the biggest thing to note is the why. As I'm sure y'all know, our community housing is in pretty poor shape. 26% of the residents rate their home in poor or fair condition, which compared to the national average is 7.5%. That's a pretty high number, 1/4 of our community rating their housing in poor or fair condition. And of course, that's only for respondents in the housing needs assessment itself, so there's also some caveats with that. There's some more data in there that we covered in the report, so if you are interested in some of the more specifics, I would appreciate if y'all refer to the report itself, but I'm happy to have an email or offline conversation about that, any data specifics in the future. So as Elsa mentioned, the former BOCC did use ARPA funds to fund the $250,000 for the EAF program. The Energy Assistance Fund program served 88 Lake County residents or households with 180 residents fully benefiting from that. And that was in various things related to their home needs, such as roof repairs. Sometimes we put people fridges because they were completely out, and other such, usually leaning more on emergency needs. We also were very careful about the funds in the sense of I leaned heavily on our other programs, such as CARE or WAP, which Weatherization Assistance Program, and Colorado Affordable Residence or something program. I forget the full title, but those are both state and federal programs that help with similar things with people at 80% AMI or lower. But it's more tailored towards doing a full audit and doing improvements within that audit. Our EAF program, we know that there are other issues outside of energy efficiency issues in the home. Often roofs was a big one that wouldn't be fully captured by an energy audit. And we wanted to make sure that residents feel comfortable in their home and again, their poor or fair condition of their home improved a bit. Obviously, $5,000 won't cover everything, so we did work with a lot of our community members to cover some of the costs most of the time while they covered the rest. Or utilizing other programs in combination, such as having a partnership with the Northwest Council of Governance, and having a partnership where they could potentially utilize our funds if anyone was utilizing CARE. So we were being as efficient with the money as we could be, while still addressing the need of the housing itself. Spoke about it a little bit, but the qualifications really were for anyone 120% AMI or lower. What this resulted in is that everyone basically that came into my door qualified for the program. It's a really high bar to clear, and that was done on purpose. To Emily's point, we do recognize that community members who are going to reach are most likely going to qualify. Community members who have more resources tend to just go and do it. Because it's way faster, but those members that did come to my doors and spoke to me, we were able to work out something to help them out, whether it was using this program or using other programs to help address their needs. So there was times where I would refer people to different programs to address their needs, just again in the sake of being good stewards of the county's money and making sure we're being efficient with what money was used. So we really stayed on top of making sure we used every program and every tool in our tool belt to address people's needs. Now, the last thing is where we're going from now. C4 recently received a grant of over $400K from Energy Outreach Colorado and the Mountains Plan Environmental Justice Grants Hub. We're basically going to continue this work through them, so we're not asking for a re-up on the funds from you all. As Emily mentioned, our goal isn't necessarily to just get county money and run with it. We do want to be good stewards of this, and you all and previous BOCC allowing us to kind of pilot this program really made it much easier for us to sell this program to other funders. And that's why we're seeing such a high investment from other grantors and funders into this program. This is completely in line with our housing needs assessment. I'm not sure if you all have had time to review that or not. I imagine you haven't because you're pretty busy, but the housing needs assessment, part of what's highlighted is of course how many units we need to create for rental and affordable housing, but part of it is also trying to maintain what we have currently. So our goal with this program specifically is to maintain. We're not necessarily looking to construct new things, we're looking to maintain and make sure community members who live here, many of the community members who I talk to, for example, were being priced out because of a combination of things, but especially their electric bill. When we work with those community members, we want to see what we can do to lower that bill for them, and that's all we talk about. I'm not too personally involved in the environmental aspect of it. Of course, there's huge benefits for that, but most of the work that I do with my community is just speaking about how it is that we can make their lives here a little bit easier and actually able to continue living here, especially for those who are on Social Security and other limited income folks who've lived here for years. So that's been the majority of the focus of the Energy Assistance Program, Energy Assistance Fund, and again, just to re-clarify, all of that was through me. I occasionally would try to have Emily help me, but most of that was through me, and address pretty on par what the housing needs assessment said that there were issues with our own program. So you saw the same type of housing type, you saw generally the amount of people utilizing the program, and the general interest, and the high amounts that people accessed. These weren't small projects always, these were very large projects, just really highlighting the poor fair condition of our homes. If you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, what, is there ever any like outcomes evaluations or, who's looking at like what the total results of some of these are like? Because, I see, I have one situation here where it was a roof repair, you guys gave them $5,000 and it was done by themselves. And who was there to like, just kind of oversee that? I could try to fix my roof, but am I gonna be wasting your money? I just like, where's?
So I can speak to that. So one piece is, we're a small community, and so I think we were learning with the BOCC as we went through this project, and one of our goals at C4 is to really make sure we are the best stewards of the funding that we handle, and so just to point out, 100% of what the BOCC granted us was returned to the community members. We did not charge overhead. We funded, C4 funded Christian's position separately, and so the way that funding works when we disperse it is we will either pay a contractor directly, or if a community member can demonstrate to us that a project is in their wheelhouse, such as they are a contractor, they are a construction worker who does this work. So the same way the county permitting office works, if they can prove that they can do the work, then we will reimburse them for supplies or purchase supplies. But we never just give funding out and say, oh, you said you did this work, here's funds. They have to be able to provide financial proof that the project took place.
Without getting too into specifics, just because it is personal cases, that's one of the honestly rare occasions. Most of the time we do work with contractors, because people don't know how to repair their roofs, to be fair. Often is the case that in situations like this, it is most likely the person is employed in a place that does work like that. I'm not an expert in any of those fields, I tend to refer to just making sure that there's obviously a connection there that's more obvious, at least obvious enough for me to make, not just like a, well, you know, I'm a handyman, so I can do whatever. And like I said, that's a really one-off. Most of the people that we worked with related to whether it was a roof or like house siding or any other major issue. Most of that was purely through contractors. A lot of them, or not a lot of them, all of them we asked to provide quotes and provide more information on it. But of course we can't really share any of that since we aren't at the liberty to, we haven't collected a release of information from those people to be able to share exactly the specifics. But generally speaking, there was a bit of process to make sure that there was stewardship of it. Of course, not being someone who knows everything about sidings or roofs or windows or anything. There's an inherent flaw in that somewhat, but we did do our best to make sure that the people at least knew what they were doing and worked in the appropriate place if they were doing it themselves.
I will also add in that policy is consistent with our energy rebates. When you're making a home improvement, to qualify for a rebate, it is the same financial policy. You either have to provide a receipt from a contractor or receipts for purchasing the materials. So it is consistent across all of our programs for every participant regardless of income.
Also, one thing I did forget to mention, I do tend to ask people to get multiple quotes, just for fair practice. There's times where people are getting gouged pretty hard, though I don't have any experience directly on the exact costs and having to replace a roof myself because of how much I worked with people who have, generally I was pretty good at kind of sniffing that out a little bit and being able to tell people, maybe you should go get a different quote. That happened a couple of times, so making sure that everyone understands that ultimately it was up to the decision of the person themselves who they end up going with, but most of the time while I didn't tell them exactly what to do, I did try to work with them to kind of find the best fit.
Yeah, there's need a lot of windows in this town. Window upgrade there is a
There are a lot of upgrades to be done on our existing housing, and I think this was really, honestly, just a drop in the bucket. I will say, part of the report was a list of specific households that we assisted without identifying information. And so originally the county grant, this was a $300,000 project with $200,000 going to the specific use. The other 100 was supposed to be for deed restricted homes, which did not, was more a project that the county was taking on versus C4, and because it didn't move forward, we made a second request to reallocate those funds because we had gone through that $200,000 before the beginning of August. I think the program was closed for less than a week and we had a wait list of 9 people. And so we asked the BOCC to reallocate $50,000. And part of that request, we agreed to provide some more specific information. We are always happy to provide information, but I will say that what we've provided was specific to the previous BOCC and their request.
And like I said, I'm happy to sit down with y'all and talk about any specifics, not of clients, but any specifics of my program and how it works and all that. Especially as we go forward, I know we're not going to be necessarily directly working with you all for the funds, but it's the same principle of trying to work together. Ultimately, the idea of this is that we want to support the community, and part of supporting the community is supporting the community's housing. So we want to be able to make sure that we work through that. So at any point that y'all are interested in, my door is more than open to have those conversations about these programs and how it relates to housing needs assessment.
great. Thanks, Christian.
And so the other significant, do you have another question?
No, I was,
And I'm
is the charge controller fixed?
oh, the the inverter.
Yeah,
The inverter is scheduled to go back online in May.
okay,
So the other large piece of support that C4 received from the BOCC in 2024 was to save the Lake County's community solar garden, which I will say the BOCC and Lake County government is the largest subscriber. You own 38% of the subscriptions at the garden, which is why we really came to you to save this garden. The inverter had been broken since 2020, and the owners were in bankruptcy. And so there really was not a pathway forward to bring the garden back online. We had tried to work with the various subscribers for about 6 months before April of 2024 to come up with a plan to save the garden, but unfortunately no one else was able or willing to step forward in time. And so with about 30 days left before the bankruptcy proceedings moved forward, C4 stepped forward and purchased the Lake County Solar Garden for $1. That said, the cost of this garden is significantly higher. So last year the BOCC contributed about $15,000 towards our legal fees to save this garden, and then another $113,000 towards fixing the garden. All in all, this garden was a $2 million investment from our community across all subscribers to build, and so we felt it was really critical to save it. We didn't want that investment to go away. There is a pathway to bringing it back online. We did ask for and receive contributions from the other large subscribers, which includes the town of Breck and Parkville Water. We also received a grant from Excel and the Denver Foundation's Renewable Energy Trust towards fixing the garden and bringing it back online. And so we're really excited to say that within just over a year of closing on the garden, it will be back online, and you all will be the first to know.
Do we know what the lifespan is left on those panels themselves? They won't last forever, and I feel like they're getting well along in their age.
Typically, projects like this have about a 20 to 25 year lifespan. We are 10 years into that. And so the contractor who is doing the repairs, that is also something they are looking at. Something I will say is, as part of this project, C4 then went on and purchased the owner's remaining 9 solar gardens in Excel territory, which has given us access to significantly more resources, including solar panels. Many gardens like this, unfortunately not the Lake County one, but many other gardens have backup panels that we can now tap into if we need to. My understanding from the most recent update I got was that there's maybe 1 panel that needs to be replaced currently. But otherwise, even while it's been offline, there has not been significant damage. And our hope is that we don't have to come back to the subscribers in the future to ask you all to contribute. Part of the challenge with this is an inverter is about a $250,000 fix. When community solar gardens were really piloted in the around early 2010s, 2015, no one imagined that piece of equipment would both break and the manufacturer would void the warranty, which is the case in Lake County. And so solar gardens like this, they have a reserve account that is paid into over time through the REC credits. So there's 2 forms of income for a community solar garden. There's your on-bill credits, which you will, when this is back online, you will begin to see that on the county's Excel bills. And then there's the REC credit that is paid out by the federal government. It is not a payment that is at risk. And the REC credit comes to C4, and we can use that to rebuild the operation and maintenance reserve, which we are only allowed to use those dollars towards the operations and maintenance of the garden, or we can pay them out to subscribers. We have set a policy that those reserves will have to reach a certain level where we can repair large fixes like this, where this is financially viable for C4 before we pay out REC credits. So you likely won't see those dollars for many years. That said, at the end of the project, when it is wrapped up, any remaining dollars go to the subscribers, so it goes back to you. So it just changes the time frame in which those dollars are paid out. But by purchasing those 9 other gardens, you know, we were able to turn this opportunity that was really, I think, a disappointing story for our community and really sad into a huge opportunity for C4. So we estimate that this year Cloud City Solar will bring in between $60,000 and $75,000 to support C4's operations.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that, I know we are at time, but that brings me to the slide I will end on, which is our economic impact. So actually 25% of C4's budget comes from earned income. Now, we are a nonprofit. That means, you know, it doesn't mean we can't make a profit. It means that any profit we make has to be reinvested into our mission. So between Cloud City Solar, our zero waste event services, Cloud City Farm, and a few other smaller programs, we earn about 25% of our budget on our own each year. This year, our budget is estimated to be $1.3 million. I will note that when I started in 2019, our budget was $150,000. So yes, we have grown. We have grown from 1.5 full-time employees to 9 full-time employees, plus a significant amount of seasonal employees. And I think that has a real economic impact in our community. When we are looking at how do we sustain our community beyond the closure of the mine, I would highly encourage you to include nonprofits when you are considering businesses. We create thriving wage jobs, we hire local contractors, and we provide direct financial assistance for the community. So in 2024, 85% of our budget went back to the community directly. The small amount that didn't was to purchase things like high tunnels, which unfortunately we don't make here in Lake County, so we don't have a choice to purchase them elsewhere. But it is a priority of our organization to spend as much money as we possibly can here in Lake County. So for example, that $250,000 contract to repair the Lake County Solar Garden, 100% of those dollars are going to Lake County businesses. We are working exclusively with Lake County contractors and businesses to repair that garden.
Cool.
And I was gonna talk about what's next, but I know we're out of time and it is a great segue to the rest of our conversation.
I'm sorry, I need to use the restroom.
Yeah, sure. I'll be right back as well.
I'll let you take it.
Thanks, Emily, Christian. We get to carry on with the next agenda item. Nell had actually brought up having discussions with you. We were up there hanging out with her at Climax about economic development and other fun topics.
Yeah, Nell and Climax have been great supporters of our work and huge stewards.
A huge resource for this community, not just, you know, the obvious stuff, but much.
Yeah, they actually sent us Nell sent me the EPA Sustainable Communities Accelerator opportunity
Great.
and said that if we applied and were accepted, that they would help cover any costs.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, we have quorum, so moving on. Agenda item number 2, further discussion regarding a grant with the Colorado Energy Office providing funding for a sustainability manager position. This is led by the BOCC and Emily Olson.
I'm actually happy to get us started. Do you wanna
I
wait
would
for
love
Commissioner
that.
Wilson? Okay. Do you wanna wait for Commissioner Wilson or just get started?
Should be like that, that's good.
Good call.
So far, it's work through all of our programs. That's our table to share. But if that's a match with the equipment, then it's probably a way until we address for minutes. How I could do it. Well, I know I don't have to. Yeah. I'll leave for this stuff.
I haven't, where do you think I have from teaching that, like, now I don't know. Yes.
I've never seen you not in like semi-professional, so.
Is that teacher, you're just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I love work, it's year
Also, my dad was a writer. So we would always play standby, so I spent out way about flying too, but there's good chances. That's why we used to have those very threats to like go fly. So it's like, for like,
Oh, sorry, that took so
Okay, fine.
long. Okay. Available.
So, I can get us started on this conversation. As you may remember, we already had a conversation at a regular meeting on this position and this grant. We had quite a bit of discussion, and so laid it over for this final decision on 4-1. Emily was there providing public comment and said that she would be happy to have another conversation about it at this certain meeting, so that's why we're talking about it now. Just an internal update on the climate action plan, which is another grant funded program that we have going on right now. We have decided that it's going to be jointly managed by CPD, PROS, Public Health, and Public Works. So they're meeting early next month to kind of figure out who's doing what with the grant. Who's going to be the main point of contact with our grantor, who's going to manage billing, invoices, etc., who's going to be the main communications lead. So it's kind of a new thing that we're doing to have departments that are all impacted by this work collaboratively in managing the grant. After we kind of decide internally how that's going to work, we are going to bring partners like C4 into the table to help have those conversations on a more frequent cadence, managing that grant and the climate action plan. So that leads into the sustainability manager. I did have a conversation with the director of local climate solutions, Russ, at the Colorado Energy Office. We did clarify, I got some clarification on directions that they had given to grantors. I had heard that they had told grantors that they're recommending grantees go with a contractor instead of an FTE. That is not correct. They are just telling counties, basically grantees, that it's your own risk tolerance. Basically that they did have a pause on this grant, it's a federal dollars passed through the state. There is no guarantee that this funding will continue. If they are paused at a federal level, they will pause this grant also. So if the feds turn it off, we will no longer have the funding. They have 9 grantees currently. So far only one has moved forward with hiring an FTE. A few others have gone the contract route, and other grantees are in a similar boat to us and have not made a decision yet, but only one of the 9 currently have done an FTE. I know our neighbors in Chaffey are moving with a contractor position instead of hiring a staff member. The recommendation from staff, from myself, has not changed. We do not feel like moving forward with hiring a full-time staff member is wise at this moment. Do not wanna have to onboard somebody and then have to let them go 6 months later. That seems like a waste of resources, understanding it takes finance, HR, IT, all time to hire and onboard new staff. It seems like actually a waste in my perspective if we have to let them go 6 months later. So our recommendation on hiring an FTE has not changed. However, it is up to the board if you would like to move forward with this grant at all. We've already been awarded. Or if you would like to move in a contractor type of situation where we could hire a contractor, whether it's C4 or someone else who would put it out to bid, to have a contractor do this work. Again, it is a reimbursement grant, so we have to spend the money first, hope we get reimbursed. It happens on a monthly basis, so it's not quarterly, which is good, but every month we will incur expenses paid for likely out of the general fund, and then we would get reimbursed by this grant if it still exists at that time. It will take staff time to manage the grant, right? Finance to invoice, a staff member at one of these 4 departments to oversee that grantor, as well as the climate action plan. So it's up to the board, but I just wanted to give you all an update from the internal perspective, where we're at and our recommendation for you. I don't know if you wanna jump in on your perspective, but. So C4, I will say that C4 chose not to apply for this grant because the county expressed interest. So we would have been eligible, and we would have pursued this grant had the county chosen not to. I do think, and I hope that you saw today and have seen from other organizations that have presented to you all, that climate action, sustainability, natural resource stewardship intersects heavily with everything our community works on, and everything you all are working to address. I know that none of those things were addressed in your priorities as a BOCC, but it does intersect with that. I think if we want to lean heavily on winter tourism and winter recreation, we need to do everything we can as a community to make sure that winter lasts. And that it lasts as long as it possibly can, and that we do have snow. We are already seeing as a community what happens when we don't. I'm not saying that that work directly translates to more snow, but if we don't hold those values, people who are visiting here, that's something tourists look at in this state. The Colorado Tourism Office has identified sustainability as something that is quite important to visitors. And I do think we have seen that the county does not have capacity to push this work forward. You have an employee right now who is working on it, and it's not in her job description. She's taking it on because she cares about it. And I don't know that that's fair. And I'm glad that there are directors who are stepping forward to help make sure we fulfill the climate action plan grant. But I do think this is an opportunity to really help push some work forward. And yes, there is risk, but again, it is a monthly reimbursement. I would hope that that is something the county could handle. I think it's a great way to pilot some of your the new ways that you're managing grants. And I would really encourage you to consider what it would look like to move forward with a contractor, whether that is an organization or it's an individual, to try to achieve some things while this grant is funded. And I will say, while there is a lot of news out there about federal funding, specifically around climate, I will say I know the one that's in the news the most, that is a grant that is specific to propping up low interest loans for energy efficiency improvements. That I believe the federal government is pursuing charges against, or is trying to explore criminal action. But that is a grant, like, these are not the same funds, it is not even from the same pooling. And I think we have seen in our country that Our country doesn't support revoking these funds. And while we may not know what happens, we should use these funds when we have them available. And I would really encourage you all to consider how we could take advantage of them. You know, I talked about the 4 general areas that C4 works in. There are so many areas that are still on the table that we as a community don't have capacity to move forward, and creating this position and using these dollars would give us an opportunity to do that.
And then what would you have done if you had been awarded the grant? Because now I'm seeing that the grant is in the community, so like, do you feel as though the county like kind of robbed C4 of an opportunity, or do you feel like, great, it's in the community, we were gonna go for this too?
I don't think you did at all.
Okay.
We highly support the county. We want other organizations, other groups to take on this work. We
Yeah.
have no intention of being the only group working on this. The more people at the table, the better. And we want the county and local government at the table. If we had applied, it probably would have been a position to work between the city and county and provide capacity at both. But honestly, I was really glad that you all applied. We have grown a lot in the last 5 years. And really our goal this year is to sustain our work, not to continue to grow.
Yeah.
Can I just point out, the county was already discussing and planning to hire somebody as a sustainability manager when, I found out about this grant program and was like, oh, hey, that directly supports, potentially this position that we're already trying to do. And the reason probably that we didn't just hire somebody last year as a sustainability manager is because you couldn't backfill and get the grant funding to support somebody who already worked here. So it's not like we saw a grant opportunity and said, oh, hey, let's create this position if we can get this money. It was the other way around.
I
So-
appreciate that, I think we're in a little bit of a different
Of course, but I just
environment
wanted,
right now, we do have a moratorium on brand new
Yeah,
FTE.
Well, what?
Moratorium on brand new FTE.
Where was the sustainability manager gonna be, in CPD? It didn't have a location yet. This is still part of that conversation. Okay, yeah,
That's a tricky one, right? We can figure out where that was anyway. I think, you know, I'm open to discussion on contracting aspect. I think, speaking for myself, that FTE is off the table, given the risks and the current situation. No one had a crystal ball. I wish we did, or else, you know, this might have looked different right now. But for me personally, I think the FTE is off the table. You guys are more than welcome to your opposing views, and that's fine with me. We're allowed to.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
But that's just gonna throw that out there right off the bat. I'm open to discussion on contracting, but,
Can you help me understand what this person, how he would fill he or she would fill a whole week? Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
like 40, we're talking about 40 hours to fill it.
Well, we have 9 full-time staff who manage to fill 40 hours a week at C4
And
working.
this is something
Yeah.
that you can't do. So how does this person's work differ from the 9 people that you have?
Yeah, so I think within the county, there's some great examples. You are looking at upgrading this building. There are still currently many financial opportunities, not just from the federal government, from the state government, from utility providers on how you can do that in an if you do that in an energy efficient way, how can they help you fund that project? My understanding is there isn't really anyone at the county who has capacity to explore something like that. You could direct them to work on that. There's also, I believe that Jeff Wheeler reached out to you around some projects that Excel is working on right now. They are severely gas restrained in the mountain region, yet they just invested tens of millions of dollars in our community to upgrade our gas lines. And they are having to present to the PUC around how they're going to address that. And they are looking at providing significant incentives for electrification. And Lake County just chose not to show up at the table. We could have gone and advocated the same way that Summit did for their community and had a say in that process. If we had capacity within our community, they could go to conversations like that and really advocate and say, hey, we are not Summit County here in Lee County. We could have advocated as a community and said, we don't want to invest tens of millions of dollars in our gas lines, we want to invest in our electric service. There have been efforts by the county to bring more EV chargers to our community, applying for projects like that. I believe that mobile home infrastructure is something that you all are concerned about. That is absolutely something. Water access, water quality within mobile homes, that is something they could work on. I believe the electric bills at the fire station, Southern Fire Station, are pretty substantial. Working on opportunities to bring more solar, whether it's a project the county owns or it's more community solar. The climate action plan itself, I think asking several department heads to facilitate that is a really big ask. Your department heads are incredibly busy, and I really appreciate that they're stepping forward to steward the climate action plan. I appreciate the employee you have right now who's doing it because it's something they're passionate about, but having a sustainability manager who could manage that grant for you, fulfill all of those roles, who could meet individually with department heads and make sure that they feel like they are heard in that process. Meet with all of you to make sure your priorities are reflected in the climate action plan and in the risk assessment. We're gonna have to update our building code pretty soon. I believe it's gonna be mandated next year. And what we have heard from the county is that that's a pretty arduous task. There are grants from the state that can help with technical assistance, but having someone on your staff who can really say, hey, this is what we need in Lake County. They can meet with builders and say, hey, how do you feel about this? What support do we need to provide to make sure that when you're gonna get your CUP for a new home, that you can meet these code requirements, that you have someone in Lake County who can actually do the blower door test that will be mandated. Currently we have, I wanna say 2 or 3 contractors in Lake County who are eligible to receive Excel rebates. So it's often very difficult for Lake County residents to access the rebates that Excel provides. Figuring out how do we increase those contractors. I think those are that's at the top of my head, a list of things that this person could work on. I know, within the county, we talked earlier about landfill infrastructure and recycling. I believe the individual we work with has a full-time job managing the landfill. And we are all so lucky that she is passionate about recycling and diverting waste from the landfill. But oftentimes my team is up in her office with her and following her around at the landfill to try to get information, to try to work together, because again, she's juggling a lot of roles. This would be a position that could add a lot of capacity to public works to think about that. Sustainability really intersects with everything, and it's up to you all with your priorities to say, hey, this is what we care about and this is what we want to work with. And if you fill that position with an appropriate qualified individual or contractor, they're gonna have a never-ending list of things that they can work on with you.
And if I may, just real quick, specifically towards housing, there's a lot of state bills that I used to follow. I can't keep up anymore because of how many there are that keep revolving around the door. That is going to have influence on both our county and city, and unless we have someone specifically geared towards that, this is another place where that sustainability position could potentially have an impact, is keeping us on top of state legislation that talks about sustainability, whether it's housing, energy efficiency.
With the limited amount of time that we're looking at right here, I'd really like to hear from Jeff Fiedler, since he had the most time spent in looking this thing up. Jeff, can you tell me a little bit about given the situation we're in right now and the risks that are involved with bringing in, costs to the taxpayers, what does the full-time position versus contracting, pros, cons, could you put some of that into your own words to help illuminate that for me?
Yeah, I mean specifically on full-time versus contracting,
Well,
or
more on the content of what.
Actually, let me add to that, do you think there's any way, say that the funding dries up for this, through the the grant getting yanked it from underneath of us, is there any way this position could save more money for the county than it costs?
Over time, yeah, I mean, not in like 3 months, and I also think it's not just the county government's own operations, like our own utility bills in our buildings, or going after grants, that could backfill other expenses, it's also expenses or opportunities missed of the community as a whole. And I think to me, like one thing that I'm not sure is fully appreciated, and I should say like, this is based on, being on the board of electric utility down south in the valley, I'm now employed, working for the state regulatory agency on utilities, gas and electric utilities, like, I don't think people appreciate the ambitiousness of the state goals that are being implemented. This isn't about spending 40 hours a week on some sort of feel-good extra stuff that goes above and beyond. This is not getting left behind by the changes to how energy is available to all communities, and just at a very high level, the state's goals are essentially to stop using natural gas for home heating, for hot water, for cooking, and shift entirely to electrify all of that, whether it's residential buildings or municipal buildings, and also at the same time electrify transportation to stop using gasoline. Like, whether you agree with that or not, that is the state policy that is being implemented every day, like today. Like literally in my job this morning, this was a public meeting, the Public Utilities Commission is discussing whether it's a good idea, or they're saying it's not a good idea for an electric utility, or an electric and gas utility, to be hooking up any new gas customers if we're supposed to not be using gas in the lifetime of that new equipment. Like a new gas equipment could be easily 20 years, gas pipeline 70, 80, 100 years. So to invest in new equipment that all of us pay for, that's just a increasingly year on year in the state. Those discussions and decisions are happening today to this community. And just something Emily spoke to, just one example of something I worked on a tiny bit on my way out the door as commissioner, and I'm working on now. Xcel is talking about how they're going to supply natural gas up to the mountain community, so Summit County, Grant County, Lake County, and they're being strongly pushed by state legislation that's in place not to expand the pipeline, but instead to electrify those uses instead. And as a result, like the current plan being reviewed, like this morning, is to not bring any more natural gas in here, and to instead beef up the electrical equipment that supplies our electricity. Now again, whether you like that or not, that has big implications. Like, how big are they ramping that up? Like, is it a doubling of capacity? Did they talk to anyone in our economic development organizations? Did they talk to any municipal entities about new buildings like coming online, and where they're coming online? No, they didn't. We're a complete afterthought right now, and it has big implications for the costs, facing individual, customers, not just the county. Like, everyone in the county is going to be faced with those options of what energy is available, what it costs, how reliable it is. If we're being pushed, whether you agree with that or not, towards like home heating, the electricity, and the electricity goes out, how much attention did Xcel pay to how resilient that upgrade's going to be when things go out? Like, these are all questions that are just happening day in, day out now. We're just not at the table with, our unique issues about older building stock. A lot of people being on water wells where your water goes out when the electricity goes out. We commute a lot and put big miles on our cars. Do electric vehicles work for us? Do they work for plow trucks? These are like real questions that I don't think a well-meaning front range person is really spend more time, enough time thinking about. And, you know, we need to be there, not as like a lobbyist, but just, you know, as these things get rolled out, it's not like a legislative lobbyist, the legislation exists. These changes are happening, and we need to be thinking about, you know, these decisions flow through into our building code, you know, our zoning, our comprehensive plan, the climate action plan, you know, economic development priorities. Like, should we go after a business that needs gas? Like, I don't know.
Well, it will really impact how we engage with the state as they like try to figure out ways to help certain communities getting on board with this. Like if they don't know that it's an issue, they don't know that we might potentially need help.
Yeah, and to give another example, like, so something that I did weigh in on, you know, and I think that a staff person really should have been weighing in on is, one way to make, you know, if you go all electric, one way to make it more resilient is to have sort of backup approaches. You know, when the main XL line goes out, you bring it out from somewhere else, you have battery storage locally, or, you know, what's the plan? So you have at least a couple hours or a day, you know, still of home heating. The state has a plan on that. I weighed in and ended up, you know, Lake is one of the few counties prioritized for state efforts on that. But, you know, if you don't show up, you don't get noticed.
Alright, thank you for that, Jeff. That helps illuminate, you know, what's kind of a murky picture given, you know, all these moving targets that we're trying to wrap our heads around.
Can I, just in the sake of time, I have just a budgetary question. How much is the grant again? 300,000? 340? 240 for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Over 3 years. So that's $80,000 a year. Right? Yes, $80,000 a year. Just in terms of like, this is, of course I want this. To be clear, of course I want this. I'm from the generation who like, has decided, do I wanna have kids or not, based on the direction that we've been treating our planet. Okay, I'm on board with this. My question as a commissioner is, how do we use that grant to purchase the best quality support over the course of that grant as possible? Because $80,000 doesn't buy you a lot in an FTE. So instead of buying like 40 hours of work a week to do almost like an entry level, what we could afford for an entry level position at like $55,000, I would, in my mind, I would rather see that money, until we are more financially resilient, be put towards $80,000 of however much time that is every year to get really quality work, even if we don't get the quantity that we could potentially get with a 40-hour-a-week position.
Is that grant tied, do we have to hire a full-time employee?
No.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Elsie.
You said only 1 out of the 9 counties who qualified has gone with an FTE. Do we know how many of the counties have started contracting out, expecting reimbursals?
2 or 3.
2 or 3.
The rest said, yeah. So the rest have decided, but.
I hate to cut everyone off, but we've got, Hillary Henry, coming in from, Michael Bennett's office, so we gotta move on to the next, agenda.
I don't have anything on the other end, so I'm happy to wait if you guys need to finish a discussion as well.
Okay, if we can just have a few minutes to kind of wrap up so we don't have to abruptly cut everyone off so much. Does anyone else have any closing statements, any kind of, yeah, Jeff?
Can I add just one thing? Sorry, I know I talked for a long time already.
It's okay.
I appreciate that. I just forgot to put some numbers on some of these issues. So just that one decision, the Mountain Energy project about bringing gas or electric up here, you know, that's about $150 million. It's about $4,000 plus or minus per household. You know, and how those costs get expended, approved, allocated, you know, across households. I mean, that's the kinds of money that we're talking about that is being decided about. How does that spread across the whole Excel system? Is it charged exclusively to like new hookups? You know, so this is not like $3 a month. these are big per household, or per municipal building numbers that we're talking about. So I thought it was important to throw those kinds of numbers out, for sort of what's at stake for not being paid, so.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the numbers, because those are like the nuts and bolts that I use to build the pictures in my head with. Yes.
Just food for thought, since you decided to move the decision for this to next week's April 1st meeting. And it sounds like there's still some questions and still some discussion around how to best structure this. It might be beneficial to continue to delay making a decision on this item rather than trying to push out into just one more tight set meeting next week.
Good, thanks, fair enough, good idea. Okay.
I gotta say, I really appreciate, Jeff, your work getting this grant on board. And I know that this is valuable for our whole community, including around equity and access to these. And I really appreciate, Emily, you continuing to be willing to come to the table with us, even though C4 has had a maybe confusing relationship with the county. And I also just really appreciate the demonstrative example you gave of stepping into 100-year-old homes, managing 100-year-old homes, and considering that even our new housing stock will someday be 100-year-old homes. It's just a really valuable multi-generational perspective that I think that, especially as elected officials, we might not consider all the time. And Jeff, your work is obviously keeping that long-term legacy intact, so I just wanna say thank you, because it needs to be a priority, and I'm grateful for the work that went into this before we even got here.
One last thing.
Just, something to consider, I just do wanna say, just because my name wasn't, my picture was up there, I'm no longer on the board, I'm not employed by C4. I still volunteer, but I'm a passionate community member about this issue, and it just seems to me, without knowing all the nuts and bolts, you got money allocated, and you got the grant for the climate action plan. This is a ripe opportunity, and I think doing the contractor gives you a real opportunity to try it out at the only risk of perhaps 1 month where you've paid out. I don't know what the logistics of the grant say, how much can you spend in a month, or does it have to be allocated equally over every month? Getting an expert in there, giving the people working on the climate action grant, it maybe, like Emily says, maybe they need it, getting as much expertise while you've got money in hand, and hopefully it stays there for the 3 years, but there's just not a lot, it doesn't seem like a lot of risk to find somebody with expertise to help guide our communities.
I mean, it's the FTE that's the risk for us. Regardless, there is risk in the grant. Whoever's doing the job, that's, eyes wide open about it. It's not like a stable situation, although I don't wanna behave from out of fear or scarcity. That's not gonna, then we lose, so.
We gotta keep moving. There was someone who had their hand raised online.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, hi, this is Melissa Kier. I wrote a letter to all three of you commissioners. I want to thank Commissioner Bullock for responding. I really appreciate that. Just wanted to raise a couple other comments, especially around what Susan Fishman just said. I really do think that the idea of hiring a contract staff person for a little bit to see how this goes would be most beneficial. There could be a concern though of what the cost is for a contract staff. Many contract staff that work in this field do charge quite high, so you may not get the bang for your buck that you're looking for by hiring a contract staff compared to someone who is an FTE. But at least to try it out, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity. And then There was one other item, which was with the, by hiring a contract staff person, at least you all will need to plan a work plan. So making sure that there's a lot of work internally that you all will have to do to provide a work plan for that contract staff member. So there is work that you all will have to do that you wouldn't have a full-time employee preparing and creating on your behalf.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, thank you everyone for all the valuable information put forth. It's never easy in some of these things, especially in such a dramatically shifting landscape.
Could we ask that if you do decide to change or postpone your decision, Lauren, could you let us know what?
Yeah. Okay, moving on, agenda item number 3. Thank you for being so patient, Hillary. We really appreciate that. We are notorious for asking too many questions and running over our allotted time. So, yes, an introduction and update from U.S. Senator Michael Bennett's office, led by Hillary Henry. Thank you, Hillary. Welcome.
Hi, commissioners. Thank you so much for having me at your meeting today, and welcome all of you to your to the start of your terms as commissioners. I think really excited to work with you and to get to know you. And today I just wanted to come and introduce myself, and I'm looking forward to spending more time in Lake County and getting up there. So as a way of background, I'm Senator Bennett's Western Slope Director. I'm based in Grand Junction. I've been with the senator for about 3.5 years and have covered counties for him, primarily in the middle Western slopes, but am now taking on a new role and will be overseeing our entire Western Slope team. And so we're currently hiring for a few more positions, but I am your first point of contact should you need anything from Senator Bennett. And would love to give you just a little bit of information about how we love to work with our county commissioners, and then I'm happy to give you an update about things we're working on or take questions however you'd like to spend our time together. So I will say my job is really to be boots on the ground for Senator Bennett in the Western Slope, and to know that what you all are working on and needing from the federal government in Lake County, and then also be communicating with you what we are working on for the senator. So a couple of things: if you ever have constituents that need help from a federal agency, whether that's someone who needs help with their IRS tax return, they have an immigration case, they have a grant that's not getting funded and need someone to help, please always feel me as a resource. You can send those constituents my way. We have a large casework team they're incredible and they do great work that can help your constituents should they be running into trouble with the federal government. So I'm always happy to be in touch about those things. As you're applying for federal funding, we're always happy to provide you with a letter of support and consider supporting your project. We love to do that, and we love to try to work with our counties to get as much funding as we can here in Colorado. So if you can give us 2 weeks notice, we especially appreciate that, but we can turn things around pretty quickly too. So if you're ever applying for federal funds, or you have a project and are wondering if there's federal opportunities out there, I'm also always happy to take a call and brainstorm together with you about ways we might think about like federal funds that could apply. And then generally, I think anytime there's lots of ways that our counties interact with the federal government, whether that's through Medicaid, Medicare resources, our federal lands, veteran services, Bureau of Reclamation and water resources. We are here to support you as a county in the work you're trying to do and to help you problem solve when you are interacting with the federal government. So my inbox is always open, and I love getting calls from county commissioners saying, you know, we're experiencing this on our federal public lands, or we're running into this issue. Who can we call? Can you help us get in touch with someone? And I'm always happy to make those connections or to think through whether we could write a letter or provide oversight or introduce legislation. I think Senator Bennett believes all of his work should be grounded in Colorado and takes that very seriously. And so we really look to our county commissioners for ways we can be responsive to the needs of Coloradans. And you all are our first touch point. So would love to hear from you all about what you are thinking about as you start your terms at Lake County, what your priorities are. And then if it's helpful, I'm happy to talk to just a little bit about sort of the outlook for the federal government and what our office is working on.
Great, thanks for that. Nothing comes to mind for me personally right away. I don't know, I'm not speaking for either of the other commissioners.
I've got a couple concerns. One, it'd be wonderful if we heard from Bennett about our letters of support that we wrote for some of the initiatives in Lake County towards budget requests for 2026. Just to make sure that he receives those and to have follow-up if he has any questions when it comes time to discuss those.
Did you send those to me personally? I apologize. I don't know.
No.
They may have gotten we get a lot of mail, and so if they went to another inbox, let me track them down, and I'm happy to get a reply back to you on
Hillary,
those.
they haven't. They're for congressional directed spending requests.
Your applications, yes, that closed on Monday. Got it. Okay,
Yes,
now I'm tracking on what you're talking about. Yep, totally.
Great. So we definitely, as commissioners, supported a few things. So it would be wonderful to make sure that if the senator has any questions, that he's reaching out to us for any follow-up about impact and why we supported some things over others.
Great.
Especially when it comes to infrastructure, we all signed the letters of support for our sanitation infrastructure, which is ancient, and as a rural community that does not have a lot of affluence, we don't have a strong tax base for that district to be able to keep investing, even in deferred maintenance. So that's really, I say that's important to all three of us.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
great.
staying abreast of what's happening with our federal land agencies, especially when it comes to wildfire season this summer. We really, we are going to need to know if we're going to have help so that we can regionally be supporting each other in wildfire management. If any of those resources are going to be pulled from our federal agencies. We're at a huge wildfire risk in many parts of our county, if not the entire thing.
Thanks for those points also, because that kind of gets the juices flowing and has me wondering about some other things now too. Just, you know, with this shifting landscape that we're trying to, you know, stay abreast of and make the best decisions for our community.
Hillary, are you there, love?
Oh no.
Yep. Oh, she's gone.
She hung up on us.
What's up, Hillary? No, I have more things. So I get in an email.
She can reschedule.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna try and text her.
Emailed her, but
Did you?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to cover the western slope, probably pushing a lot of iffy signal areas.
Mm-hmm.
You're
We're not, yeah, that's what, you know, I just brought up the map, the boundaries of the Western Slope, and technically Lake County's not in.
Well, for his office, he might put us in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe it was just.
but it's, yeah, that's because I was like, 'cause I remember using that phrase with somebody that said, well, Lake County's not in the Western Slope, it starts on the other
Starts in
side.
Roaring Fork Valley, right?
Well, it
Well,
goes,
other side,
Whoa.
yeah, there she
Oh.
is.
What's up,
now.
Hillary?
We hear
I'm
ya.
so sorry. I am on the road today, and I thought it'd be a little bit quieter if I talked to you all from my car, and my phone just overheated and died on me.
Oh no.
So I moved. I so
It's not
apologize for
crazy.
making you wait.
No worries.
Yeah, not a problem.
So we were talking about the water infrastructure and CDS. I think I need
Okay,
to
yep.
transition to another topic.
Okay, the other
We were
topic
talking about federal public lands and fire. Is that
Yeah.
right?
yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah, I'm
And
happy to give a little bit of an update on how we're thinking about that. So Senator Bennett, he sat on the Agriculture Committee since the start of his time in the Senate, and the Forest Service is part of USDA, so it's actually overseen by the Agriculture Committee, and he's the ranking member on the subcommittee for forestry issues. And so he has been very concerned about the terminations we are seeing for land management agencies, and particularly the Forest Service. For, the administration has said that wildland firefighters are not affected. I think that sort of overstates the fact that 2/3 of non, like, full-time federal wildland firefighters also hold red cards. So they provide support in wildfire incidents, even if they aren't in the classification for wildland firefighters. And we have seen between the deferred resignation or buyout offer, the terminations of temporary employees, they are right now being reinstated. I think it remains to be seen whether those are reinstated to hold. And then the more recent reductions in force, very significant cuts for our wildland firefighting operations. And that also doesn't account for mitigation. So prescribed fire, mechanical thinning, all of the work we need to do to prevent. Senator Bennett invited a terminated employee from the White River National Forest back to the joint presidential address to Congress to highlight the need. He's written multiple letters. He held a hearing with Senator Marshall about the Fix Our Forest Act, which is I'm getting a lot of background noise. Are you all having background noise?
Will you shut the fan off now?
Perfect. Now I can hear much better. So that is primarily a bill that does reforms how environmental review and litigation happen for forestry projects. But he brought back Jonathan Houck, who's a Gunnison County Commissioner, and the recently retired Regional 2 Region Forester for the Forest Service, Frank Bim, who both testified on the need to maintain Forest Service funding and staff, and how that if Congress was serious about preventing wildfire, that those were our first lines of support, and we needed to be talking holistically about it. So I will say that we are tracking this very closely, and we are very concerned about our land management agencies and how we are going to go into the summer season with fire. And so would love to stay in touch with Lake County about how you all are seeing that play out on the ground. I think I've been telling all of my local government partners, we are in, perhaps differently than in the past, a lot of our best information is coming from local governments themselves rather than the administration. And so it's so helpful for us to know whether you're seeing changes to how your trailheads are being managed, or whether projects are not going forward that you expect to go forward. All of that is very helpful information to us to have, and we're doing everything we can to raise the alarm on we need our Forest Service here to protect our communities from wildfire.
Oh, thank you so much, Hillary.
And it's not just the wildfire conversation, although that takes precedence over a lot of things, but we have a lot of local businesses that will be affected if there are closures in areas like Vale Pass, and we can't snowmobile up there because there's just no Forest Service people to facilitate it. And we need to be, do our best to keep abreast of these things. If there's, closures like that on the horizon, we'd really appreciate it if you could let us know as soon as you guys hear anything or know anything.
Definitely. Yeah, I will follow up and send you some of the ways Senator Bennett has been engaging on this. And if there's more to come, I'll make sure to flag for you. And then, as you are seeing things on your end as well, I encourage you to reach out to me. And we can just stay in close touch. I will say, like, overall, like, we are seeing a lot of changes happen very quickly at the federal level. And so more now than ever, we are, encouraging our counties to be in close touch with us. And I am doing my best to do the same, but I never mind getting a phone call of like, hey, did you know this is going on? Because there's so much happening, and we're not always getting advance notice that it is really helpful to hear from our local governments about what you're seeing. And, if you have particular concerns, we're always happy to reach out to the agencies about that, or to think about other ways we can engage, because we're trying to be very clear about what the real needs of our Colorado communities are right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing that it would be wonderful to have federal support with is the Medicaid changes that are getting proposed, especially in the House of Representatives, that I'm sure will eventually, well, hopefully they won't ever get to Senator Bennett, but like the work requirements that are being proposed for Medicaid and SNAP would be a huge, number one, they don't work. And number two, they'd be a huge administrative cost burden to small counties. And I'm sure you're aware that Colorado is about to have to significantly change the way that we're administering Medicaid, which means that we'll be able to serve fewer people. So to have work requirements put on top of the changes that are gonna be made statewide for Medicaid, it'll just mean we can serve fewer and fewer people, and that's not an option in our county, where 37% of our community is currently on Medicaid and likely a lot more eligible but not on it.
Yeah, thanks for that too. I think we are really concerned that, I think the Colorado budget is in a very tough situation. And then we are also seeing massive budget cuts proposed at the federal level. And, I think, at the federal level, these budget cuts are primarily being proposed to pay for tax increases or tax reductions. And I think we have a lot of concerns with that. One, because I think Senator Bennett's position is healthcare is a human right. We should be providing healthcare to people, but also for our rural hospitals. So hospitals are likely to see people show up to them needing healthcare, whether or not they are insured. And what often happens is the higher percentage of uninsured patients just means that comes out of the hospital's bottom line. And so I think we're also, in addition to worrying about the individual people who may not be able to access healthcare given these cuts, we're also worried about maintaining our rural health system and making sure everyone can keep our doors open. So Senator Bennett is on the Finance Committee, which does oversee taxation, and so is paying very close attention to Medicaid, and we're trying to engage closely with our rural hospitals. But I think it's great to know that you all have a high Medicaid population. And again, I think I'm happy to share information as I'm getting it on my end and as you all are thinking about it and what it means for Lake County. Really appreciate, encourage you to be in touch with me as well.
Thanks, Hillary.
Hillary, do you have an idea of when the federal budget will pass, or are you expecting it to be in September? Or do you think a deal will be negotiated earlier? It just impacts our budget timeline.
Yeah, so Congress 10 days ago passed a year-long continuing resolution. So that maintains budget levels at their current. So instead of passing a new budget bill, they just maintain spending levels at their current level. I think if you all were paying attention to the national news, like that was hugely controversial for a lot of reasons. So I don't expect that we will not see a fiscal year 25 budget. We could see a fiscal year 26 budget. The earliest we would see that is at the end of September. I think Congress does not always pass a budget on time, and it's hard for me to tell in this environment. Congress is also going through a reconciliation process that House Republicans are leading, and that's how what you've heard about extending the Trump tax cuts, sort of like the one big, beautiful bill that would include funding for border security, extend the Trump tax cuts, and then also do other administration priorities. That's going through a separate budgetary process called reconciliation. That process makes it so that the Senate can get around the filibuster and they only need 50 votes instead of 60 votes. I would expect that reconciliation package could be on a much quicker timeline than September. And so Congress, the House has started the reconciliation process, and now it is going to move over to the Senate. They passed started the reconciliation process when the Republicans were still thinking about two bills, one for tax cuts, one for the administration's spending priorities. Now it looks like it's one bill, so they will need to restart that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And if you need more information there, I'm happy to get it to you. It's all pretty wonky, all of these different budgetary moves. But so if you have specific questions, I'm happy to follow up and get you more information if that's helpful.
Yeah, I would love to know what the priorities are. Where are we to see new funding?
Yeah, I'm happy to get you that. And I will say, I think this is primarily a bill that is being negotiated by Republicans. It's not being negotiated. The reconciliation bill is not being negotiated with Democrats. And so I'm happy to follow up with sort of overall what the priorities are. But I will say that Senator Bennett is mostly concerned that this is, passing large tax cuts primarily for the wealthiest Americans, and will come out of programs like Medicaid and Medicare to pay for those.
Thank you. And my last question is, we received in 2021 congressionally directed spending for our Justice Center through the USDA. Our contact at the USDA has been challenging to get a hold of. Is that something I could put both of you on the same email, and you might be able to help me navigate getting an alternative response to make sure we can start drawing down that funding?
Why don't we can reach out through our congressional channels. So I'll follow up with you about the specific project And I'm
Okay.
happy to ping, and I'm sure, as you all know, we are seeing various funding being frozen and unfrozen. So I can do my best from my end to understand why you might not be able to draw down that funding, or if, perhaps if there's been a change in status of the person you're working with at USDA. So yeah, let's follow up on your CDS grant. I think we're very happy to do that. And, we have seen a number of challenges with CDS projects across the board, and we are really trying to prioritize making sure we can get status updates on that. So very happy to work on that with you.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any more questions for right now. I think we're gonna link up tomorrow, and chat, and I have so much
Great.
to learn about all of this, so, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. So yeah, thanks so much for taking time. And please feel free to give me a call or an email. Anytime. I'm always happy to chat with commissioners and make sure we're being as responsive as we can to your needs.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Hillary. All right, anything else? Any other questions for Hillary from anyone in the room? No? Okay. All right, well, you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Great, looking forward to it. Thanks so much. Really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay.
Oops, sorry.
That's it for us for the day. It is 4:06 PM. We're going to conclude today's work session, Lake County Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.